You want a chocolate? I could eat about 1.5 million of these. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Forrest Gump is still admired for its touching plot and unforgettable scenes. The film's richness comes from the plethora of tales that lay behind its memorable sequences and riveting performances. A wealth of interesting facts can be found in Forrest Gump, from the real-life events that inspired Forrest's epic cross-country trek to the creative choices that formed its most iconic lines and scenes. One major mistake in Forrest Gump has gone unnoticed until this very moment. Let's begin. A sequel could have been possible. Based on Winston Groom's 1995 follow-up novel, Forrest Gump, the second adventure was in the works for quite some time. Within the plot of this meta-sequel, Forrest meets Tom Hanks and becomes self-aware, criticizing his own film for its errors. After Bubba Gump Shrimp Cupboard fails, the story follows Forrest as he struggles with parenting, sells counterfeit encyclopedias, and works as a janitor at a New Orleans strip bar. The project never got past the development stage, so it will only stay a footnote in the Forrest Gump tale, even if the idea was interesting. Feels nearly real. There is a fascinating real-life analog to the film's Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, which Forrest starts to make his friend Bubba's dream come true. Paramount Pictures and the Rusty Pelican Restaurant Company used the film's renowned shrimping plot to develop a restaurant chain called Bubba Gump Shrimp Co., when it became a huge hit. With an initial launch in 1996 in Monterey, California, the restaurant company now boasts 43 sites throughout many continents. At these eateries, you may get seafood, typically shrimp, while being swept away in a Forrest Gump-themed experience complete with film props and knickknacks. An interesting turn of events occurred in 2000, before Chris Pratt became a Hollywood celebrity, when he was found working at a Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. restaurant in Maui, Hawaii. While serving clients, a director saw his gregarious and hilarious attitude and offered him his first acting role, a memorial bench. With its pivotal part in the film's legendary sequences, the seat from Forrest Gump is an unforgettable filmic artifact, a seemingly insignificant fiberglass seat in Chippewa Square, Savannah, Georgia, become an iconic film prop. Tom Hanks's character, Forrest, spent most of the film sitting on this bench, telling random people waiting for the bus his incredible life tale. The setting was hand-picked for its scenic surroundings, and the bench played a pivotal role in several pivotal occasions. The bench was placed on the north side of Chippewa Square, with Forrest facing Bull Street by the production crew, in order to get the ideal pictures. For the pictures of Forrest getting picked up by a bus to line up with the filmmaker's vision, the local Savannah police had to invert the flow of traffic around the square, which is rather interesting. 4 similar seats were utilized throughout filming, with each one serving a specific purpose in different shots of Forrest's contemplative monologues. Following the completion of filming, the city of Savannah received a donation of one of these benches, which is now housed at the Savannah History Museum. Many people have been flocking there ever then, wanting to see where Forrest really told his stories. Even though the seat is protected behind protective barriers, fans can still get a good look at it and even go on a Forrest Gump film tour that stops by the iconic area where the scenes were filmed. The remaining 3 seats are considered priceless artifacts by collectors, and nobody knows where they are. Props from The Wizard of Oz, including Judy Garland's ruby slippers, have fetched exorbitant amounts at auction. In spite of its understated design, the bench has become a cinematic and fan-centric icon. Jimmy Carter's Fatigue from Too Much Heat. In case you forgot, Forrest went on a well-known 3-year journey across America. I think you could have overlooked one little element. During his race past a small-town barbershop, Forrest happens to catch a news broadcast that states President Jimmy Carter has had heat exhaustion. Forrest is captivated by this real-life occurrence that happened on September 15, 1979, which gives his otherwise haphazard voyage a historical context. Some inconsistencies do arise, nevertheless, as a result of the film's light-hearted approach to history. Based on the plot of the film, Forrest starts his epic journey on July 5, 1976, which would have been before Jimmy Carter became president in January 1977. Since Carter had not yet become the presidency when Forrest's campaign began, this fact alone produces an apparent paradox. The sole purpose of merging these timelines was to place Forrest at crucial times of history in a manner that highlights his subtle but profound impact on the past. Difficult shooting environment. In an interview with The New Yorker Live, Tom Hanks discussed the mental and physical challenges he faced while shooting Forrest Gump. The film's famous and emotionally charged cross-country trek was an arduous and taxing ordeal. Hanks elaborated on how capturing a handful of crucial scenes in one place wasn't enough to pull together this montage. To get the real feel of the country's surroundings, the production crew instead traveled across the United States. For 27 days straight, Hanks had to don his costume, run for hours in various locations throughout the nation, and then hop on a plane to the next set. Continual movement and travel with little respite in between made these cross-country sequences physically draining. Hanks was exhausted from the cumulative weariness and the never-ending jogging routines. He wasn't able to give his full attention to other crucial moments, such the ones set on park benches, because of the rigorous pace of the running scenes. The sequences that form the backbone of Forrest's tale were shot in a mere 15 hours, and Hanks remembers being completely worn out by the time they were finished. With so much dialogue to present, he found it difficult to maintain attention. Regarding his speech, have you picked up on his southern accent? Seen with feathers. The feather that floats in the opening and closing credits is one of the most famous and thematically rich moments in the film. The flight of the feather was not produced using computer-generated imagery, as is commonly believed. The filmmakers achieved a natural, stunning effect by filming actual feathers against a blue background, catching many flights, and then digitally merging them. Following the path of least resistance and embracing chance are key tenets of Forrest's life philosophy. Reappearing in the film's conclusion as Forrest's kid gets on the school bus, it emphasizes how life's path may be both led and unexpected. The Southern slang he used. Hanks had to work on his Southern accent until it sounded true and unforced if he wanted to convey Forrest's Alabama heritage. Hanks, interestingly enough, took cues for his accent from Michael Connor Humphreys, the young actor who played Forrest in his younger days, rather than from conventional dialect coaches. Hanks went to considerable lengths to imitate Humphreys' speech patterns, which reflected his naturally gentle Southern drawl as a native Mississippian. The result was a voice that was constant during the character's youth and adulthood. The success of the picture was greatly contributed by the joint effort of Hanks and Humphreys in perfecting the accent. His performance was so well received that Hanks was nominated for Best Actor at the Academy Awards for his painstaking efforts to perfect the accent. The Young Artist Award went to Humphreys for his depiction of a young Forrest, whose genuine Southern dialect and performance set the stage for Hanks's legendary turn. Tom Hanks will not obtain compensation. For his part in the 1994 smash hit, Hanks opted to bargain for percentage points rather than a standard wage, meaning he would get a cut of the film's total earnings. This choice was consistent with Forrest's innate financial intuition throughout the film. The picture was risky business back then. The production crew and Hanks were optimistic about the film's prospects, but none could have foreseen its colossal impact. Forrest Gump became one of the year's highest-grossing pictures, with a global total of almost $678 million. Hanks was able to cash in on his percentage point bargain when the film bombed at the box office. He made almost $65 million at the conclusion of the film's run at the box office, which is far more than his regular wage would have allowed him to make. The disabilities of Lieutenant Dan. Gary Sinise's portrayal of Lieutenant Dan is one of the film's most striking features. While fighting in Vietnam, Dan loses both of his legs. When they showed it on TV, though, how did they do it? It was a technological triumph, and the use of special effects was crucial to it. The visual effects crew were able to digitally remove Sinise's legs after filming, since he sat in a wheelchair while wearing blue cloth. This gave the impression that Lieutenant Dan had actually lost his legs, which added to the dramatic weight of his character's trials and tribulations and eventual redemption in the film. Gary Sinise's portrayal of Lieutenant Dan, a wounded soldier attempting to rediscover his life's meaning in the aftermath of his injury, was highly acclaimed. Together, Sinise's performance and the film's special effects created an incredibly believable depiction. One of the most moving aspects of Forrest Gump is the character's journey from damaged and resentful to finally finding peace. This is only the beginning. Wow, that's only the beginning. An artificial lip. Mykelti Williamson gives a terrific performance as Benjamin Buford Bubba Blue, a memorable supporting character. Bubba, who Forrest knew from his experience in the Vietnam War and his shrimp business enterprise, is an important person known for his huge bottom lip and unusual pronunciation. But Williamson didn't always have Bubba's distinctive appearance, especially his prominent lower lip. Using a prosthetic lip, the filmmakers gave Bubba's lips a particular, exaggerated form, giving him his trademark appearance. It required a lot of work to develop this prosthesis. The crew was very concerned that Bubba's lips should appear realistic and mix in with Williamson's face without looking fake. Many individuals failed to notice that the prosthesis was artificial once it was finished. Williamson's portrayal brought nuance to Forrest's narrative with his gentle voice and shrimp fixation. He became a cherished character in the film. Despite Bubba's prosthetic lip, Williamson delivered a performance that made the character come alive, and spectators couldn't help but root for him. His small but significant part resonated with viewers. Just stand at the door of the schoolhouse. In addition to Vietnam, the film sets Forrest against the background of other watershed episodes in American history. The integration of the University of Alabama is one such event. It was a watershed point in the fight for civil rights. Attempts by Alabama Governor George Wallace to prevent James Hood and Vivian Malone, two black students, from entering in 1963 became renowned. At this period in the film, Forrest is portrayed as a college football player. The symbolic effort by Wallace to halt desegregation, his stand in the schoolhouse door, is captured by him. Actually, it was June 11, 1963, and President Kennedy dispatched federal forces to make sure Malone and Hood could enroll without incident. Wallace was escorted out of the room by U.S. Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach. The kids were finally accepted under federal protection when Wallace backed down. The film's depiction is in sync with these happenings, fusing the imaginary presence of Forrest with a watershed moment in civil rights history. Guests of honor. Much of the historical interplay between the lead character, Forrest Gump, and pivotal periods in the 20th century was accomplished through the use of digital photography and imaginative editing. As a young guy, Elvis Presley visited Forrest's house and learned dancing techniques from him. This was one of his cameo appearances. The actor Peter Dobson played Elvis physically, down to the trademark hip-shaking, but the voice we hear in the sequence wasn't his. On the contrary, Kurt Russell supplied the narration. Curiously, Russell had already established himself as an actor after playing the part of Elvis in John Carpenter's 1979 biopic of the same name. To give the impression that young Forrest was an influence on Elvis's most recognizable feature, his hip, swinging dancing style, Russell recorded additional words and had them expertly inserted into the sequence in Forrest Gump. For then a decade, Nobody knew about the cameo, which is a shrewd homage to history and Russell's ties to the King. Russell did not officially acknowledge his cameo appearance until 2016, 12 years after the film's premiere. He said that Robert Zemeckis had requested him to replace the unsatisfactory original voice recording. Even though he didn't know whether the other performers were aware of the adjustment, Russell retold the scenario in an interview with GQ, revealing how Zemeckis contacted him for help and how he agreed to do it. The fact that Russell had lent Elvis his voice for Forrest Gump, but not Elvis, added an extra layer of intrigue to the issue. Singer Ronnie McDowell provided the vocals for the biopic. It was manageable to keep the cameo a secret, which is really difficult in this day and age of online spoilers. A meeting between President Kennedy and Forrest. Forrest Gump's unique combination of fact and fiction lets audiences see pivotal periods in American history from the eyes of a regular guy who goes above and beyond. An example of a situation where fact and fantasy clash is Forrest's encounter with President John F. Kennedy. Forrest meets John F. Kennedy after being invited to the White House and being named to the All-America team in the film. The Associated Press did not reveal its All-America team until December 6, 1963, which is 2 weeks after Kennedy's killing. Therefore, this event is not based on reality. Given the current state of affairs, it is quite unlikely that Forrest could have met JFK. Regardless of the contradiction, the scenario does more for the story. It sets up a situation when a major historical event is compared with Forrest's fictitious achievements, providing a humorous take on the past. The story's theme, an unusual hero whose life connects with key cultural and political milestones, is emphasized by this combination of whimsy and realism, which adds to the story's magical but sympathetic quality. Though they are aware that it is a work of fiction, viewers are enchanted by the way these pivotal events in Forrest's life are woven into the story. Vietnam War. Original scenes. Recruiting and integrating individuals with below-average intellect was a true but now discontinued military procedure that Winston Groom reflected in the harsher tone of the Vietnam War sequences in the original screenplay for Forrest Gump. The Army took issue with this portrayal. Therefore, the film was edited to remove all mention of mental disability from the platoon, save for Forrest and Bubba. Bill Allison, a military historian, praised Forrest Gump despite the change for accurately portraying the danger and anarchy of the battle. Allison brought attention to the ambush sequence in which Forrest saves Bubba, pointing out that the Viet Cong frequently used surprise assaults. The usage of humping as a military term for marching and the film's accurate depiction of heavy tropical rains were both lauded by him for their realism and their impact on the battle scenes. Alternative cast members. I bet you didn't realize that Tom Hanks wasn't the first pick to play Forrest Gump. Chevy Chase, John Travolta, and Bill Murray were among the actors given the role, but they all turned it down. Since then, Travolta has spoken up about her feelings of remorse, saying in an interview with MTV from 2007 that she should have said yes to jobs like Forrest Gump. Dave Chappelle, Ice Cube, and David Alan Grier were all considered for the part of Bubba, but Chappelle was afraid of racial stereotypes, while Ice Cube was apparently uncomfortable playing a character with a handicap. Grier went on to express remorse during an appearance on Busy Tonight with Busy Phillips. After Demi Moore, Nicole Kidman, and Jodie Foster were all considered for the part of Jenny Curran, the part went to Robin Wright, who received nominations from both the Golden Globes and the Screen Actors Guild. Lieutenant Dan was almost played by Kevin Bacon, but Gary Sinise stole the show with a spectacular performance. The line that made the film famous. This is Forrest Gump. It's one of the most famous lines in the movie. Tom Hanks's "People Call Me Forrest Gump" was an impromptu line. Although it wasn't in the initial script, this improvised line became a defining phrase of the film and helped cement its legendary position by giving the character more depth and personality. on the battlefield. Forrest Gump's Vietnam War scenes were shot on a South Carolina golf course, something you might not know. A lot of computer-generated imagery went into producing the thick jungle setting that was required for the sequences. This digital augmentation was crucial in recreating the thick, verdant jungle foliage seen in Vietnam. Adding more palmetto palms to the terrain bolstered the tropical vibe and gave the impression that the location was more real. Despite the unique environment, the producers were able to bring spectators to the heart of Vietnam by blending actual effects with CGI and other elements. Primarily, these sequences took place on Fripp Island and Hunting Island State Park, 2 islands off the coast of South Carolina. The run was funded by Tom Hanks. The legendary cross-country run scene from Forrest Gump almost didn't happen because of financial restrictions. Paramount Pictures was hesitant to fund the ambitious montage, according to Hanks. Nonetheless, Hanks was approached with the idea of dividing the expense by director Robert Zemeckis, who thought the run was crucial. Each of them put their own money into the series so they could have a bigger cut of the earnings. The risk paid off. The run became an iconic scene in the film, showing Forrest's impulsive choice to run for no particular reason, and leading to a national trend with supporters wearing "Shit Happens" t-shirts. What the flu virus? While filming the football sequences, Tom Hanks had to run the length of the field many times due to his sickness. It was physically taxing to run back and forth in those conditions, but Hanks's dedication was evident. To show Forrest's incredible athletic ability and the real-life tenacity that made him who he is, these moments were important. Taking the kids to work. Jenny grants little Forrest a spot on the school bus after he endures rejection from 2 other students in the iconic moment where he joins the bus. Not everyone is aware that these 2 kids weren't actually actors. The young man who rejects Forrest happens to be Alexander Zemeckis, son of filmmaker Robert Zemeckis. His daughter, Elizabeth Hanks, who is also rejected by a girl, is none other than Tom Hanks. This sequence accentuates a crucial juncture in Forrest's formative years. Jenny's selfless gesture of providing Forrest the seat initiates their deep connection. After the fact, Forrest thinks back on it with such fondness, saying that Jenny was like an angel and that he had never witnessed anything so lovely. They form an inseparable friendship that plays a pivotal role in the plot. Jenny's bond with Forrest is profoundly meaningful because of the challenges she faces at home, such as her mother's death and her father's abuse. For the time being, that is it. I appreciate you tuning in. How was this video for you? To make sure you don't miss any of our future uploads, we would really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe if you did. Moreover, you should not miss the absolutely mind-blowing video that is currently playing on screen.